I don't know about you, but when everyone is feeling stressed, you're going to notice there's two kinds of people out there, right? People who are ready to spend money and people who are reluctant to spend money. Now, notice what I didn't say, right? I didn't say there's people who spend money and people who don't spend money. Because the truth is, everyone spends money. They spend it in one way, shape, or another, but they spend money. It's just whether they are eager to do it or reluctant. And if you're an agency that's putting together proposals right now, you're finding yourself in one of two spots. People are asking for proposals going through the roof, or it's all dried up. I haven't seen anyone sitting in the middle. Over the last couple weeks, I've seen groups where they're like, I just got to keep pushing out stuff. And folks that are now chasing down those leads that had come in, but they're not getting pressure to turn out quotes. Everything else is dried up, and now they're trying to get back out there. And if you're in that second group where you're trying to generate leads, you're trying to generate deals, your inclination is to just start discounting your quotes just to get a deal done. And I want to recommend for you another strategy, a different approach. Okay. What we know, right, is that what someone pays has more to do with themselves than you. You gotta get that clear right off the bat, right? What they pay. I want you to imagine for a second if you walked into a shoe store and you found four pairs of shoes that looked basically identical. And one pair was $50, another was 100, another 120, and the last pair was 400. There's a group of people that are going to buy the $400 pair of shoes no matter what. And they're going to add to it, they're going to ascribe to it all sorts of value, like it'll last longer, et cetera, et cetera. But that's how they think about their purchasing. There's going to be people who buy the $50 pair because they will always buy the cheapest product that's out there, just because they're like, it's a pair of shoes, I'm going to walk around, it's not that big a deal. And then everybody else sits in the middle, right? 100, 120, whatever, they're going to pick that. It has nothing to do with the product. It has to do with the story that they find themselves in and the story they tell themselves. And if they tell themselves, I'm for the utility of something and I'm always going to pay the cheapest price, I'm not going to overpay, that's how they see themselves when they look in the mirror. And someone else who spends the most on buying something more expensive, it's how they see themselves in the mirror. It often has nothing to do with the product. And what that means is when you're putting together that quote, it often has nothing to do with what's in your quote. It has to do with how they see themselves and whether they are eager to spend the money to invest versus someone else thinking about it on the cost side and they are reluctant to spend. And so the strategy I want to share with you today, right, is how you put together a quote when you're living in that world, when you're in that tension, and when your inclination is just to drive a discount strategy to close more deals. And of course, I don't recommend that. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to take the work, whatever work you're thinking about putting on a quote, and I want you to cut it into, say, thirds. Here's a third of the work, here's another third, and the final third. And I want you to take the third that you think your client or their team could do in-house. I want you to take that off your list. I only want you to quote the 2/3 that only you can do. I want you to find the other part, whether it's Q&A, testing, if it's data importing, migration, something you think they can do. I want you to take that third off your list, and I want you to shrink your costs by and the proposal by 2/3 or by a third, so that it's only 2/3 left. Now, I'm not telling you to lower your price. I'm telling you to price less. Price less items on the list. If you have a list that you used to think was 20 items long, right? What does it look like for it to be 14 or 15 items long? How do you take the rest and say, listen, in order to get it to you at this price, these are the things you would have to do. I want you to put that together in option number 1, right? People talk about good, better, and best. It's similar, but I'm not talking about good, better, and best. I'm talking about DIY, done for you, and accelerated success, right? 3 different models here, but you can think about it as good, better, and best. And if you think about the good offer, I want you to think about it as 70% of what a customer might have thought would go into the proposal. Now, not every customer is going to think about every single thing. So you might be in the case where you put 100% of what they thought was in, but you still left 30% out of what they didn't think about, but needed to be there. So 70% you put in and you say option 1. And what you tell a customer is, hey, listen, the way I'm able to get you this price is because I'm going to do this much and you're going to do this other part. Now, what's option 2? Option 2 is 100% of what you know needs to be there, which often is more than 100% of what they thought needs to be there. I work with people all the time who are like, I want to build an online store. And then you get into, well, tell me about this kind of integration. Are you going to need to integrate with a third-party shipping solution? And they go, oh yeah. And you go, well, that's not normally part of the quote, but I'm going to need to put it in here because you have to have that or it won't work. Or you say, we need to do a code review on the stuff you've already done to just optimize for performance and speed. You want a fast and converting store. They go, yeah. You go, okay, you probably weren't thinking that, but I need to add it in. So I tend to talk about this as the 120% solution. It's 100% of what the customer needs, but it may be 120% of what they thought they were buying. And so it's going to be a little more than they may have thought, but I'm going to offer it to them and I'm going to say, listen, you can go get quotes from everybody else and they'll be less than this, but when you get those quotes, make sure to compare our list of what's included to their list of what's included, right? I'm basically placing a landmine when they go to talk to their next vendor because they're going to get there and they're going to say, wait a minute, you don't have anything related to third-party shipping? And they go, no, that would be extra. And you have them now, right? You've differentiated between you being the expert who knows how to think about the solution and some other agency who doesn't. That's the option B. And then I want you to think about option C. And option C, what I like to tell people is think about it as 200%. If we had 70% and then we had 120%, what's 200%? What is so much more than they even asked you for? This is in the good, better, and best, this is the best. This is the accelerated results approach. And you'll discover that there's a group of people, now it's not a ton of people, there's a group of people who would love to invest if they could accelerate the results. Like, okay, you say this project's going to cost $20,000, but if you paid $30,000 or $40,000, man, we could see massive growth in whatever it is, whether it's leads, sales, whatever. And they go, well, I would totally pay for that. And other people will be like, no, I'm not paying for that. So it's for a small segment of your customer base. But often we don't even pitch that, right? We're so anxious to not put a big number in front of someone that we don't get there, when in fact, there's a small set of customers who are like, yeah, I'll pay for that every day of the week. I had a customer and I said, in the hosting world, we were talking about building this e-commerce store where we could create a little control panel where he could define how much we could grow the cost of hosting for him. Like, hey, we can throw up more servers, but you can put a max here because I didn't want to overcharge him, right? Like you can put a max to say not to exceed $20,000 a month, right? And he looked at me, he goes, no, I don't want a max. And I'm like, no, I'm not saying that I would charge you the max. I'm saying I would help you by limiting the, he goes, no, I understood you. I don't want a max there. If you need to add more servers, that means more people are coming in to buy and that'll pay for it all. So just keep going. If I took all your servers, that I would be happy. And you go, this is a guy who doesn't care if his bill goes higher and higher and higher because he's not buying infrastructure. Just like the customer who I'm talking about with you is not buying services. They're not buying services. The services you're providing are the proxy to get to the results they want. And the third kind of customer wants to buy the results and says, yeah, charge me more, like whatever. And you go, okay, well, I can build you the website, but in reality, we think you ought to invest even more, right? This is where we go from the 100 or 120% to 200%. We think you should invest even more so that we can drive the traffic to the site to drive the conversion. So I'm going to suggest we add another chunk of money to whether it's, social ads or Google ads or whatever it is, but I'm going to add another component. Or I'm going to build a mobile app, or I'm going to build whatever it is that you've added on. You've grown the project, not because you just want more money, not because you want to sell more services, but because you're specifically trying to get that customer more conversion, more value. You're taking next year's results and moving it into this year. And that's the way I talk about it. I'm like, hey, here's a DIY approach that lets you save money, but you're going to have to put some sweat equity in to get there. Here's the one that gives you everything. It's a little more than you probably thought it was, but that's because when we think about the project, it needs to have more than most people normally put in the to-do list. And then this last one, it's not for a lot of people, but if you want to see next year's results in this year, then we would suggest a higher level of investment to really drive the kind of growth that we're talking about. 3 options, and I put that all into one proposal because there's going to be people who are hesitant to spend, and that's the first option for them. And there are people who are eager to invest, and that's the third option. And then anyone who might be in the middle gets that better option of the good, better, best. Hope that makes sense.